Most founders would kill for Hector's problem. He runs Unplugged, cabins in the countryside where you check in, lock your phone in a box for 3 days, and actually disconnect. No Wi-Fi, no doom scroll, no work.
Eventually, at the recommendation of a friend, I ended up at a silent retreat in the Himalayas, which was this Buddhist temple on top of a mountain. And the best thing about it is when you get there, they take your phone off you, spend 10 days completely cut off from the outside world. And that was really a revelation, because up until that point in my life, I had never gone away by myself. I'd never spent that much time just alone with my thoughts, really leaning into the discomfort of that. And it was transformational. I mean, very cliche, but I came back from that, quit my job a week later and started Unplugged. So it all happened very quickly.
The brand went viral on that simple idea and stayed fully booked for years without spending a cent on ads. Demand was never the issue. But there is a quieter trap underneath the success. People do it once, love it, and never come back.
So often, founders' mentality, like founding stories, come from this place of needing to prove they're special, like on some level, a lack of self-worth, and like needing to prove to the world how special they are. Like a lot of the best founders in the world, a real chip on their shoulder. And I think it's probably somewhat there in every entrepreneurial story. It's definitely there on mine on some level.
Today, he brings me the real question. How do you turn a one-time novelty into a habit? This is the scale rule. All right. So let's start with the origin story. How did you get to the idea of Unplugged?
For sure. So Unplugged really came off the back of my own desire for something like this. So I had just many years of living in London, was working for a tech startup prior to Unplugged. So me and my co-founder actually met there. We were the first 2 employees, and it was iPad till systems, so nothing like what we're doing now. And we did the whole high growth, international expansion, very exciting. It was chaos behind the scenes, as these things often are, but lots of good lessons learned. And I think I just started to develop a real dissatisfaction with life. You know, I was going out a lot at that time. Was really busy, spending all day on my phone and just numbing myself however I could. And I felt this almost desire to find a way out, to transform my situation. I started to get more into reading and meditation. And through that lens, it just started to become this bigger and bigger conflict of the life I was living versus the life I wanted to be living or how I wanted to be feeling. And eventually, at the recommendation of a friend, I ended up at a silent retreat in the Himalayas, which was this Buddhist temple on top of a mountain. And the best thing about it is when you get there, they take your phone off you, spend 10 days completely cut off from the outside world. And that was really a revelation, because up until that point in my life, I had never gone away by myself. I'd never spent that much time just alone with my thoughts, really leaning into the discomfort of that. And it was transformational. I mean, very cliche, but I came back from that, quit my job a week later and started Unplugged. So it all happened very quickly.
All right. And how long ago was that?
That was 2019, so 6 years ago now, end of 2019.
Oh, so right before COVID?
Right before COVID. So we ordered the first cabin a month before COVID hit.
How did COVID influence the entire journey?
Well, it was a blessing and a curse. There were obvious short-term inconveniences, lockdowns. Since there were times in the first year we had to shut the one cabin we had operational because of government lockdowns. So there was all sorts of things like that, obviously. But it was also just this massive tailwind, because really what COVID did was it accelerated all of the trends that we're basically providing a solution for. So life has moved rapidly more and more online since that point. So up until COVID, there were some sort of boundaries between work and home and being online, not being online. And in the last few years, that's massively changed. And obviously things were already moving in that direction, but COVID was this huge catalyst to that. So I think actually it was net a very good thing for the business we're trying to build, because it's really changed the landscape. And it also meant that we just got a ton of PR for the first year and a half, 2 years. Actually, have had a lot since, but it just really became a of the moment thing. I think actually it's only this year that we've really started to see the noise getting anywhere like mainstream around this space. So it still feels incredibly early. But obviously it went from being a concept that might have got some airtime to just being something that was incredibly PRable off the back of lockdowns, basically.
Right. What was the moment when you finally said to myself, okay, this is it. This is working?
Yeah, so to be honest, the launch was a bit of a flop. We spent months, I'm not sure doing what, preparing with very little success. We launched, anyone booked it. And then we were just trying lots of different things. And then about 2 months in, influencer came to stay. So we'd actually originally got in touch with him about investing. He said, I'm not going to invest because COVID's wiped out all of my income, all my brand sponsorship, but I'm free this weekend. I'll come and film some content. And he had 300,000 followers. He posted. Then the Evening Standard got in touch, which is the big newspaper in London. And then it just snowballed. We went from getting a bookie a week to a bookie a day and then more. And from probably for the next year and a half after that, we basically didn't have to do anything on the marketing side of things. And we were just constantly fully booked. So that was a big tipping point.
Beautiful. Do you guys mostly get bookings from, say, Londoners? Or are you starting to get, or have you started getting international, well, non-local bookings, let's call them this way?
So I would say there's non-local bookings within the UK. So we have people traveling 4 or 5 hours to go to certain cabins from all over the UK. So not just people in London, not even just people in urban areas, people out in the countryside as well. So I think as the brand has grown, we've seen a much wider distribution. We get some international bookings, some people flying in to go and stay at a cabin, but that's definitely the exception rather than the rule, because fundamentally one of the main, I guess, benefits of what we're offering is that accessibility. Actually, it is relatively easy to drive out from your local city or get public transport or whatever it is and be at a cabin in an hour or 2 hours or whatever it might be. And so it's not really aimed at that international market of actually flying in. What we do see is we have across socials followers from all over the world. We get people who come to the UK and actually will tie into their trip doing an unplugged experience. So yeah, there's definitely that kind of thing. But I think clarity of messaging and focus is super important for any startup, and you have to pick your battles. And for us, it's really just dialing in on like our customers are local customers, and that's where we want to put our focus.
Yeah, because I guess you don't really want to spend 6 hours on the airplane so then get unplugged.
Yeah, well, exactly. And another 6 hours on the airplane before you go back to life.
Exactly. But you did expand into Spain at this point, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we launched into Spain about a year and a half ago now. It's actually a bit more of a franchise model. So working with the team out there and working on a similar concept, got put in touch with us. So that's been great. So we're a little bit more hands off there than the UK, for example. So they have quite a lot of in-country autonomy. But again, it offers something different. It offers something for our UK customers as well, because Spain is a market that's not too far away. And actually, if people are going and spending 3 days in Barcelona, then it's quite easy to tag along, stay at one of those cabins. It's also just an incredible other world. We're in the Pre-Pyrenees in just north of Barcelona. We've got 3 cabins there and a few more coming this year. And it's just an amazing place up there. So back to the focus point, it's not a massive focus in the sense that a lot of the resource and attention goes into UK because just such a big opportunity here. But found that working with a local team where they have autonomy and they can really take it in their own direction. So it's a bit more of a franchisee licensing opportunity.
All right. Because I was just going to ask that question. Like, are you really just keeping your own house, kind of like WeWork, or is it more the franchise model? But you already answered it. Yeah,
exactly. And it's not like, that's not where we see the big opportunity. So it's not, let's go and build a McDonald's and have franchisees everywhere. It's, this was an experiment. So honestly, we actually started more hands-on in Spain. And then over time decided that a more hands-off approach was better because it frees up attention to focus on the UK market. So I think this is not the kind of business where you have to be everywhere. So if you're Airbnb, if I'm an Airbnb customer, then I want Airbnb to be everywhere where I go because it then becomes how I travel.
Right.
But for us, it's not the case because again, we're helping people unplug from their local area. So it doesn't add any value to the UK customer being in, let's say, the US, for example, and it does detract from the UK customer in the sense that it takes team resource, it takes team attention away from their market. So yeah, we've been super cautious about that. There's definitely a big international opportunity in the future. But I also think another issue with just startup mentalities generally is there's such a short-term view in the sense that it's all about 3, 4, 5 years and how do we scale very quickly and sell because that's what lines up with VC fund cycles, basically. And so the whole narrative is around that. And actually you make very different decisions if you change that perspective. And it's like, well, look, what if we are still running this in 15, 20 years? There's very different decisions as a result.
For sure. And I think now, especially with everything happening in the world, like even 3 years is a stretch. We should probably be thinking like 3 months.
But that's it. But then you just can't win that game. You know, it's the AI space right now is very much that, and some people will make a lot of money from that. But it's just not a game I want to be playing. Which is you're building on quicksand. Everyone's just trying to get as big as possible before the music stops, and then 99% will disappear, and there'll be some huge winners. And that's a huge lifestyle choice. And I completely understand founders who go through, like, I know some incredible founders who it's all just about swinging for the fences, fail fast, swing for the fences again, fail fast. And they will make lots and lots and lots of money. Personally, that's just not my goal in life, and it's really not what drives me. And what I'm really concerned about is how do we make this company massively succeed and make that impact in the world? And to be completely frank, I don't care what number I end up with on a spreadsheet at the end of all of that. But then there's just very different decisions. That how do we keep this and make sure that we can move society in this direction so that this still exists in 30 years, rather than how do we get the biggest possible exit in 5?
That for sure gives you a very different strategy. And I think what you're doing is a lot more sustainable because you're leading more with the impact that you want to create and with the company being something meaningful, rather than seeing it as like a milking cow that you should like squeeze to the max and then hasta la vista.
100%. I also think comes back because on some level, we're all seeking happiness, contentment, whatever you want to call it. And we have different names for that.
Right.
Even when it's like, for a lot of people, how do they make the most money possible, enough money so they have financial freedom or fame or whatever it is. And it all comes from this place of we think that will make us happy, really. And I think a lot of that is very misplaced, especially when it comes to being a founder. You always hear about founders selling companies for a huge amount of money and then that being the worst day of their life, you know, and going into depression afterwards and all these kind of things. And I think so often founders' mentality, like founding stories, come from this place of needing to prove they're special, like on some level, lack of self-worth, and like needing to prove to the world how special they are. Like a lot of the best founders in the world have a real chip on their shoulder. And I think it's probably somewhat there in every entrepreneurial story. It's definitely there on mine on some level. And so on one hand, you know, I really want to make this positive change in the world. And I find it incredibly fulfilling what I'm doing. I love working with the team, all that kind of stuff. But then there is also somewhere in there this need to prove I'm special. And again, that's what then drives the ego and exits and all this kind of shit. And I think it's just learning to turn that voice down. And so one of the big focuses for me has been, how do I deal with my own shit along the way? Because I think being a founder running a company is very confronting, brings up a lot of shit. And I think the temptation is just to suppress that and fucking grit your teeth and run yourself into the ground and get the exit and whatever, and then go and deal with it all. But actually, what we were talking about earlier, having that longer term view, how do I deal with the shit along the way, you know, so that I can make it more sustainable for the long run?
I think you just named probably the biggest, I guess, trauma response and unproductive conditioning that most of the entrepreneurs have is this whole overperforming. As in, okay, if I want something to go faster, bigger, etc., I'm just going to do more and more and more and more and more until the whole thing like bends to my willpower. But you named it exactly. It's the chip on the shoulder that is basically telling them, you're never going to be enough, no matter how much you try, but you're going to try harder anyways. I mean, I've at some point recognized this in myself, thank God, quite recently, but that was a huge revelation. I finally realized why I just cannot freaking pause for 2 seconds. This was also the reason why I think your post caught my eye on LinkedIn. I was like, what? That exists? Like, how did I not hear about it by now? Because I've been really, really, trying to stay, get on top of everything that has to do with like personal development, not going into all this like AI everywhere. And I thought it was I think that the reason why your brand and your company works is because the idea is so freaking simple. And it's just ask anyone. If I ask any of the founders that I work with or that I know, they'll be like, fuck yeah, I would like to do it. But at the same time, I feel like it's like going to the doctors and doctors saying, okay, well, you really need to exercise if you want to be healthy. And they'll be like, yeah, I know I need to do it. And then they go on and not exercise. So I was going to ask you this. Do you get a lot of intent and maybe not enough of that intent converting into booking. So how is this happening right now? Like, are you seeing trends like this?
For sure. Well, I mean, generally in our business, supply is the bottleneck. So always running a very high occupancy, and we can talk about that later. It's just because it's physical spaces, we own the assets, that we made lots of decisions that
Right.
are fundamentally optimizing for brand and experience and makes the supply harder. So I think, like, to answer your question, that there's a lot of excess demand there. But that being said, there is a huge category of people, because we've really focused on massive top of funnel awareness. Ironically, how do we go as viral as possible on social? How do we just get as many people talking about us as possible, especially here in the UK? And so that has been the focus. And within that is a huge percentage that like the idea of doing it, haven't got around to it, are scared on some level, like whatever, what you're talking about, which is fine as well, because
Right.
you're not going to have everyone ready all at once. But I think from our point of view, because one is, to use your doctor analogy, one is knowing that you probably should go to the doctor. The other one is actually making it aspirational and really driving people that sense of, I need to do that. And that's where the marketing comes in. And really, there are some complications with scaling the supply. Obviously, that's a part of the business that all needs to happen, and operate in the hospitality business. But fundamentally, it's a marketing problem, which is really see it an exercise in category creation, which is how do we create this new category? Because there's accommodation out there. So there's lots of cabins or, countryside cottages or whatever there might be. And there's lots of retreats. There's high-end retreats, yoga retreats, all that kind of thing. And then really for us is how do we sit in the middle between the two? So how do we actually get people to get off their phone for 3 days? So it's almost a DIY retreat. So I think even the word retreat puts a lot of people off and makes it not very psychologically accessible, because a lot of people think I'm not the kind of person who would go on retreat. And so really our whole goal as a company is, can we actually get people to spend 3 days offline? That's the focus, because there's lots of other accommodation out there that talks about digital detoxing as a marketing line. So it sounds nice. They talk about it. But if it's a tool optional, people just don't do it. If you're a hotel and you say, hey, come and stay with us and you can lock your phone away, you might be like, yeah, that's kind of a nice idea. And then you get there and you're like, nah, I'm probably not going to do that. But so to actually achieve that, because in theory it's easy, but in reality it's hard. Everything we do, all the messaging, all the product decisions we make have to be around that, about how do we get people to lock their phones away, because then it becomes a completely different experience and therefore a completely different product.
So how do you maintain that today? How do you get people off their phones?
Yeah, so it's really a behavioral psychology problem. So we found out with the first cabin, because the first cabin, people saw it on Instagram. We were actually checking them in ourselves and physically locking their phones away. And they got there and they'd seen this cabin on Instagram. We tried to take their phones off them and they were like, no way, what are you doing? So we realized that it's won or lost before they even get there. So we basically have to, people have to know and be excited about the fact that's what they're actually coming to do. Because you need to prepare. You need to tell your friends, you need to tell your family, you need to make sure you can actually be offline for 3 days. So number one is to really make sure that people know that's actually what's happening. And two is, when people get there, so they lock their phones away in a wooden box, close the padlock themselves. It's all self-policed. And then there's a key in a sealed envelope. So it's enough friction that they're not opening on night one, but it's there if they need it. And then it's all about giving people the tools that they might need their phone for. So the issue is that you might put away your phone and then you're like, oh, well, I can't get around. So I need to get my phone out just to use the map. And then you get a WhatsApp message and then you're scrolling on Instagram for half an hour. So we give them a physical map, we give them a Polaroid camera, we give them a retro Nokia so they can contact us and call local pubs, that kind of thing. So it's really about giving people everything they need so they can actually spend those 3 days offline. And the other one is then there just becomes this social proof, where the more people go and do that with us and go and tell people, oh my God, I actually spent 3 days offline and this is what happened, and start to experience that. And then it starts to spread as an idea in society, because physiologically and psychologically, it's a very profound experience to go through. Incredibly, it takes about a day for the mind to settle down, and then you start to access this deep sense of calm. And what's crazy is that's how humans are built to operate. Like, we're not built to walk around with this low-level anxiety and overstimulation that we walk around with in the day. So when people experience that, when people can share that, then that then becomes a reinforcing loop.
What about potentially like gamifying this whole thing, as in, okay, 24 hours, get something, 48 hours, you also get something. End of the 3 days, you get, I don't know, next Unplugged visit, 25% off. I'm just, throwing ideas out there. Comparing this to your own retreat in Himalayas, already knew what the goal was going to be, as in, okay, I really want to, get whatever I need out of this retreat. But I think when people come to Unplugged, to get unplugged, maybe they don't even have that specific idea in their head. And you could at least plant the seed by saying, oh, you're going to get something out of it. So they're going to be working towards that. But in reality, they're going to hit the real goal, which is detoxing their brain. But if 100%. You then in front of them first, that's easier.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. And I think on that as well, there's also a really interesting point. How do you gamify coming back? Because we have some power users who will come and do it regularly, but there's a huge group of people as well who fundamentally stayed once, had a really good time.
We're talking about gamification, and you start talking about the power users, basically people who come back on a regular basis.
Yes, so the opportunity, there's this huge group of people who've stayed once, had an amazing time, and haven't got around to that next day. And I think we as a company have done a great job of almost creating it as this status thing to come and do. Like, it's the cool thing to do. It's almost a tick box exercise. And really the opportunity in what you're talking about with gamification is, how do we transition from this is something you do once and you completed it, to like, this is something you should be doing every 6 to 12 months for your mental health, for your physical health, for your relationships. And so there's a really big opportunity there. And I think gamification is a great way to do that.
Do you have like maybe a specific profile of people that comes more often than others?
Yeah, so it's 80% couples generally. So we get a lot of couples, and very often they are the power users as well. So we get a lot of couples who will come back every anniversary, or some come every quarter, just to actually invest in their relationship and spend that time off together. So classic profile is early 20s to late 30s. Both working, living in urban areas, pre-kids, but some with young children as well. So yeah, it's very clear. And that's interesting for us, because we actually thought that it would be mostly individuals going to think, journal, whatever it might be, spend time in solitude. But actually, where we've found a particularly profound resonance is with couples.
What about, maybe you have thought about this already, obviously, but I'm immediately thinking like operators and executives. You could be offering this to companies, basically saying, hey, if you send your executives for 3 days of Unplugged, all of a sudden they come back and they have a lot more brain power.
Definitely, yes. So we do have a few companies who will offer as employee benefit as well. So actually across their employee base, or we have companies who will do things like when someone reaches 2 years at the company or goes through probation, that kind of thing. I guess the other thing we see from a work point of view is you'll get founding teams that will go and do a retreat in different cabins together. So they'll go and spend 3 days in next door cabins 200 meters away or something like that, and actually spend those 3 days offline, just thinking and having space and seeing what comes up. So I do think there's a big opportunity there as well. And the big thing we see is really burnout, work-related burnout, especially in the last 2 or 3 years. I think there's such a massive rise of that at the moment, and that's definitely driving a lot of people towards this.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, because like you said, even those memes about people on public transportation, everybody's looking down their phone. They cannot handle 5 minutes spending just with themselves.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's one of those where all the momentum is in that direction. So the more time you spend doing that, it changes your brain chemistry. It's like neuroplasticity is real. So I think you always hear people talking now about how they're completely unable to read a book now, and they can't read more than a page without getting distracted. And so the more we go down these rabbit holes, the more that shapes our neural pathways to want to do more and more of that, and the more we struggle to do things that exactly. And then you get really irritable whenever you do not get whatever you want in 3 seconds. Yeah, and it completely depletes our dopamine as well, because there's something about dopamine is used up when we're seeking gratification, and there are other things that allows us to create dopamine as well. So if you're doing something like your housework, so if you clean the house, then you feel good about that, which is dopamine rewarding you for doing a good task. But the act of doing it is also creating new dopamine in your brain. When we do something like scrolling, it just completely depletes our dopamine without creating more. So we just end up in this like dopamine drained state. And what that does, because dopamine is what allows us to do things, basically what allows us to be productive. And so what it means is that it's incredibly hard to do things because we're just in this haze almost. So it really is a vicious cycle. And one of the reasons that Unplugged is designed the way it is as a proper reset. So we want people to go out there and really have a reset of their brain chemistry fundamentally, because 3 days, so it takes about a day for the mind to settle down. So the first day you actually might feel a bit more anxious. You feel like you've lost a limb, and then you start to access this deep sense of calm. And so we don't offer stays for less than 3 days. We want people to fully go through that experience and fully have their brain returning to that calm state. So yeah, on the company point, I mean, it's the world would be a better place if everyone sent their employees for 3 days offline every month.
All right. So we touched upon quite a few different topics. What is the dilemma or the challenge that you would like to bring into the scale rule today?
Yeah, for sure. I think it really is that point, because what massively changes at that point around repeat use, because what massively changes the size of this is if it's something people do once, that's one thing, but if you have hundreds of thousands of people doing this every 6 to 12 months. So I guess you mentioned gamification, and I think it's really how do we move this from this is something people do once as a novelty to this almost becomes like going to the gym. You know, you do that 3 or 4 times a week. You do this a couple of times a year for your mental health, for your relationships, all these kind of things. So I think how do we really firm that positioning in society away from this, like this is the cool thing to do because I saw it on Instagram.
So what comes to my mind right away is actually 2 things. One is the comparison with the whole famous or infamous supplement industry. So a lot of people saying they should be taking supplements, right? And some people see the benefits and some don't. So a former client of mine, I actually recommended them. They had this like super interesting personalized supplements, but a lot of people, like retention was low because people were basically excited about the premise, right? But then they won't see the benefits. And I was like, well, what about you giving them a way to record, I guess, the main things they should be watching out for example, if this was for the hair or for the skin or for the mood, like ask them to do small logs, either every day or every other day. And then 3 months from when they start taking supplements, ask them to see if they see specific differences. If they had to take a picture or if they had to logs, etc., that massively helped them to showcase to people that yes, there is actually a benefit. It might be so light that you don't see it in your everyday life, but if you're actually mindful and you're paying attention, this is where it starts coming through. I think this might be the same thing in your case, because what you're hitting upon is really, I guess, the nervous system regulation. Most of us are like severely dysregulated and we don't even realize it. Some of the reactions that we're having on every single day, and even the word reaction, we're not responding, we're reacting. We think it's okay, but it's really not. You know, especially people who have kids. This is the second thing that I was going to bring up. For me, I know if I'm dysregulated or regulated in a way how I respond to my toddlers. So if every single thing is like pissing me off, I know something is off. Like I haven't slept enough. Maybe I haven't like eaten enough today. Or maybe I had a shitty call with a client and all of a sudden I'm like, and I train myself to notice this. So I know if I'm dysregulated and I'm responding in a really bad way, I just like have to take a pause, 5 minutes, maybe in a dark room, breathe, and then I come out, you know, in a new state of mind. I think this may be the same with the people who come to Unplugged, as in ask them to really like note down, even ask them to go through an exercise at the very beginning. Like basically, I don't know, show them a picture or read some news to them and be like, so what's the first like reaction that's coming to you? And most people, you know, they'll get annoyed or there will be some big feeling coming up. And after 3 days, read the same thing to them and be like, so how does it feel now? Do you feel the need to respond or react to this right away? And if you show them the big difference in their overall state of mind and body, is going to be a lot easier for them to recognize, I guess, the reward, right, of the whole experience, and understand that this is something they should be doing on a regular basis, like the sauna or the working out, etc. Because I think that's the main benefit. It's not just doing it every once in a while; it's doing it on a consistent basis.
Definitely, yeah.
Right, actually returns to some baseline regulated state.
Yeah, amazing. No, I love that. It kind of reminds me of there's a fasting app called Zero, and when you do a fast, you press start and it will track in the app how long you've been fasting for, and it will tell you what's happening in your body based on where you are in the fast. And it is exactly, and it's very motivating, because when you get to the stage and it's like it's starting to, you know, burn up your fat supplies or whatever that might be, it's like, wow, I better keep this going a bit longer. And it's a similar thing. So I love that.
And even like every single day I could be delivering a small handwritten note saying today you should be feeling X, Y, and Z. And this will make them a lot more mindful of this. And then it also actually, oh my God, now that I think about this, it also gives you like social proof right away. You can ask them to record the experience before and after, and all of a sudden you have like shit ton of social proof. Pretty much user-generated content that you didn't even like have to do much about.
Love that.
All right. Is there any other like specific thing that you wanted to potentially crack? Or do you want me to think more into that direction?
Good question. Nothing else comes to mind.
But I think you can really, really, really take a lot out of this. Just the same way, like I said, you design the experience with the Nokia phones, the Polaroids, etc. There are a lot more things where you can add more like experience design into the whole thing. Even, for example, like you said, okay, a lot of people don't even think ahead of time. So obviously, sending them an email, etc., saying, hey, I don't know, day -1, you need to tell your relatives and your family that this is what's going to happen. Maybe some tips and tricks, and just basically do as much as you can before the event actually happens. And then after, basically like, hey, how are you feeling on day +2? Stuff like that. And then you can also obviously introduce the community aspect, because for me, this is like the ultimate goal. It's like this turning into an actual movement, because the company level and then there is the movement level. And it's the same as mindfulness, right? Nobody was talking about this outside of the Asian cultures before. Now it's a movement. So I think you're very much attached to the mindfulness in a way that you're basically people, this is the way to reach the mindfulness today. You need to unplug. So like basically creating like an adjacent concept out of this to say, this is very much attached to mindfulness. And this is basically a tool that we're giving to you to how you can reach the mindfulness, the regulation, etc., etc. So basically kind of like piggybacking on a big movement that already exists and creating just like a small sideline of your own. But I do believe that like turning it into a movement is going to be like the ultimate thing for you guys.
Yeah, 100%. I love one of the best examples of that is Nike, where actually one of the Nike co-founders wrote the book that popularized jogging in the US. And then that was the wave that they ended up riding. So there are some companies that have done an amazing job of standing something bigger than the product they're selling. And yeah, we have an amazing opportunity to do that because it really taps it. We're still super early in people are just starting to realize just what an effect being online 11 hours a day, 12 hours a day is having on us. Yeah, the time is definitely right, and we're very well placed to do that. So I think one is the experience design and how we do that, but the other one is just how we storytell, how we talk about it, the content we're creating. Organic content is another massive area we're doubling down on, which is that storytelling piece and spreading the message.
Right. And then I think another thing you could potentially experiment with is, well, I guess in, selling terms, we can call it upselling or cross-selling, as in like different add-ons that they can add during their experience. I mean, visualization comes to mind right away, and the whole, how they calling it today, mental fitness. So basically, hey, you're here to basically get your brain to declutter of all of the online stuff. But there is like a step up from there, which is actually practicing, as in doing visualization, meditation, etc. Most people are never going to do it by themselves because they need that experience to be guided. But you could be like, without pushing it, obviously, but you can be saying, hey, like on day 2, once your brain is already like returning to a normal state where it's not seeking this immediate gratification, you can do a visualization course or a workshop, like you can call it whatever name is the most appropriate, or a meditation workshop or something else. Obviously telling them could be part of experience and this will give you even a bigger benefit. And then all of a sudden you have the whole program. So I think you already have a really good concept, but there is obviously an organic way to grow it in a way that it doesn't have to be yet one more cabin, but there could be more coming out of one cabin.
Yeah, what you said there, the word program is a really interesting one, because if you tell people they're in a program or start talking about a program, I think you lose somewhat of that aspirational element of it. Okay. That really is what we need to be delivering, because fundamentally it's how do we give people a program for living a more unplugged life that centers around, maybe starts at the cabin, centers around regular trips to the cabin, but it is bigger than that, to what you're talking about, which is how do we help people make that transition throughout all of their life? And so really, we want to be providing a program. I think there are so many programs out there that have that amazing ability to just completely change someone's life and transform someone's life, even if they don't know that's what's happening. And I think that's one amazing thing to try and do. So that's a big discussion internally now, which is what is the wider program that sits on top of this.
Yep. And even it could be like more material things, such as basically maybe like, I don't know, some organic meals or something like this.
Yes.
Basically giving them the opportunity to experience the whole package, because obviously, brain is not just the thoughts and the phones, etc. It's also like what they're putting in their body at the same time. So you might be unplugged, but if at the same time you just ate a big ass pack of chips, probably not going to be as unplugged as if you've eaten some berries or something like this. So it's just, to your point, like educating them about the fact that it's a small piece of a bigger thing, but it's still a very important piece. And so basically like I said, for me, it's like ultimate goal is creating the movement. And then once they're like fully in it, then it becomes a habit, like a bad habit versus, a good habit versus a bad.
Yeah, definitely. What we see is that people come to us when there's lots of different issues and there's lots of things that we don't directly talk to. So it might be that they're eating poorly or that they're going out a lot or whatever it might be. And what we believe is that you don't solve all your problems in 3 days offline, obviously. But what it does do is it gives you the space to start to get perspective on those problems. So
Right.
as you say, we all know that we should eat more healthily. We all know that we should drink less, whatever it might be. But life happens, life gets in the way, and we just end up, like we were talking about earlier, drained of dopamine, willpower non-existent, busy, doing the things we know we shouldn't do. So what this does is actually going and taking the time offline and just really allowing ourselves the time and space to just get perspective is incredibly powerful for kickstarting other positive habits as well. So yeah, I definitely think it's really a step towards regaining some control over our lives and learning to make peace with that.
I have one more thing, because my brain is an ultimate popcorn machine of ideas. That you can have brand partnerships in a way that maybe there is like a really cool journal that you could be gifting to them at the very beginning of their experience, basically saying, hey, this is your journal for 3 days, write down how you're feeling today, then day two, I mean, there are so many brands out there that would be probably excited to partner with you in that way, because if for them it's like still merch, it would cost them a lot, but for you it's going to be a really nice addition, and then all of a sudden they have a new customer. But that's another area that you could brainstorm on. But then I understand that you're still a lean operations team, and there is only so much that you can execute at the same time. So it's really about weighting the priorities, and I guess like the short and long term effects of every experiment, because that's really the only thing that matters, like understanding where you can get the low-hanging fruit versus what would be like a long-term game, and understanding that requires certain resources.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think there's just really choosing what to optimize for, right? Because the more you, I love that idea. And then I guess the danger down that route is that we give people too much to do during their experience, right? And it then ends up defeating the point, because I've had it at times when I've stayed at our cabins and I felt like I need to read these 3 books, or I need to solve this work issue, or blah, 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 blah. And it just ends up adding a different type of stress. So I think it's how do we do it in a way that is still enabling people to do what they're there to do, which is just for the whole system to calm down, for them to start to get back into the state of calm. So I think what we said earlier around simplicity, but to your point, there are things within there that we can really be exceptional at, and it might be journaling, or how you open people up. It might be the books that people read, or whatever it might be. And so I think it's really doing a great job of the things that matter, and then saying no to all the other noise. And I guess that's exactly the same with every company.
Exactly. All right. How do you feel about your scale room experience?
Oh, it's been wonderful. Yeah, I've enjoyed it a lot. Come away with lots of ideas. I very much appreciate you having me.
I'm really excited you came on, because like I said, I usually talk with founders of tech products. So it's a nice change. And as I said at the very beginning, I can't remember if we're already recording or not, but I really wanted to plant the seed in the heads of my listeners. Yes, you guys, that this is something that you should be looking into, because I know you're all, moving at 200,000 miles an hour. And yes, this is one of the good habits that you should be picking up. Hector, how can people get in touch with you, and how can they book?
Yeah. So ironically, all over social media, it's unplugged.rest, which is also the website URL. So all bookings through our website, so you can book via there. I'm on LinkedIn, so you can get in touch with me there, or occasionally write on Substack. And that's it. And then apart from that, we're in the real world. So come stay at the cabins, or come find us in the real world.
Fair enough. My last signature question for you. What is the one truth that you know today, that you picked up on your journey, that you wish you could have told your younger self a few years ago?
That question, that no one cares. And that's a great thing. So don't be scared to do stuff, because no one's watching and judging as much as I think they are.
I love that. I think people need to hear that more often.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on, and we're going to tag all of the links as usual in the episode description.